Before we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. Thank you to our sponsor for today's episode, East Brother Beer. Located on Canal Boulevard in Point Richmond, East Brother Beer mixes classic brewing styles with precision and modern sensibility to create the perfect Bay Area craft beer. Everybody loves the heroes, but let's be real, the villains are the real badasses. Our guests today are Cory Hunt and Javier Ortiz, who took the badass villain mantra and ran with it to create the First Edition bar in Oakland. First Edition is a comic book themed bar in Oakland that skews toward the evil side of the superhuman spectrum. Cory and Javier are here on the podcast today to talk about their venture into Oakland, the trials of running the bar, as well as talk supervillains. You guys want some beer?
Sure. Normally we ask that question.
So we got a red IPA and Boa Pills.
I would go red IPA.
Red IPA?
Yeah.
I'm more of a pills man myself. Please.
You guys familiar with East Brother Beer?
No, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, one of our beverage director, she is more familiar.
Okay.
And she definitely mentioned them when we were looking up what our beer menu was going to consist of. So she had mentioned them, but I don't think we ever got to go for a visit, right?
No, because we were trying originally to do all our draft beers were going to be
Thank you, sir.
only from Oakland, and then
Yeah.
we extended it a little bit further to include Drake's. They're still all East Bay, but San Leandro.
Yeah.
We made an exception for San Leandro.
Are you watching The Mandalorian?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I think I watched each episode at least 4 times.
Wow.
Yeah. It's I love it.
I've done 2 on each for sure. And one of our bartenders, he's an actor, or aspiring actor, Dylan. And his knowledge of Star Wars is ridiculous. I was like, yeah, I don't think I can talk to you too much about this because I don't know as much as you do.
Yeah, there's some people, like, I'm into it, but there's some people that are so into it.
Like sleeve tattoos.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
You can already pre-order the Baby Yoda plushes on that.
Oh, people, I mean, I am not that into Star Wars, but, like, the Baby Yoda thing is fucking insane.
Yeah.
They're, like,
It's just taking the whole country by storm.
That's great marketing, though, on Disney. Like, whoever came up with that Baby Yoda idea, such a genius.
Yeah.
Well, someone had a tweet about that. They're like, to think that like a year and a half ago, some Hollywood executive on cocaine was in an office and went, Baby Yoda, and now like a year and a half later, here we are. There we go.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, Star Wars, like, everyone... There's so many videos on YouTube of Star Wars leaks, and it would be hilarious if that's really how Disney execs just came up with stories. Just a line of coke, come up with stories. Okay, we ready to go?
Yeah, no, we're going.
Perfect. Okay. So, Cory, Javier, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Marc.
Thanks.
So one thing I like to ask every guest on the show is what currently has your attention?
I think we're at a point right now after being a month and a half open where we're just trying to get our attention from going from constantly running around and putting out fires to getting a little more organized in our business and lives, personal lives.
It's weird how creating a new bar or a new venture sort of occupies all of your free time. So, for instance, a minute ago we're talking about The Mandalorian, which would normally be at the front of my focus. I think we both have a keen desire to, I don't know, explore stuff pop culture related. We both get along really well because of The Office, great TV show.
Yeah.
And so to not be able to have...
And actually, sorry to interrupt you, but speaking of The Office, we did our own little spoof of The Office here. Yeah, with our employees. Great episode. We'll have to, let's link that up and we'll have to show you guys later. It was pretty funny.
Michael Scott?
I was not Michael Scott, but actually my business partner was Michael Scott.
You were co-manager Jim Halpert.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Actually, I was, because I did the Jim Halpert look every time. Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird. It's weird not to have that kind of free time right now because everything needs to be focused on creating an infrastructure for the new bar. It's really, really takes up a lot of your time.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk to you guys about this because I've even had my own dreams of opening up a bar, and that might be because I tend to drink a little bit more than the average person. But like a bar, a restaurant, but I think, and a lot of people have that dream, that vision of having their own spot, but there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of different, I mean, you got to take it as a serious business. And so I really admire like you guys and people that do this as a living, as a career, because there's a lot of work that the general public really don't know that happens behind the scenes.
Well, I think also one thing that people think, is that it's your clubhouse, right? Like that's the appealing thing. It's like you're going to be able to go there and just like have a party whenever you want. And there's some truth to that, but like I think it's way overblown because it's still your business. And when you walk in and you're like, it's hard to not look at things that are wrong or pay attention to everything that could be going wrong. Like my wife hates going to the bars with me because she's like, you are just like stressing out the whole time. It's not fun. And so I think that it's like a fantasy about like the bar. I would never want to own a restaurant. Like we don't deal with food, or we do lightly at First Edition with the tacos, but like it's a lot of work and a lot of things can go wrong.
For me, I always imagine having a booth in the corner, roped off.
Just always
booth.
available.
Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah, like the gangster movies, and just show up, sit in the corner. But I would imagine you sit there and you see one little mistake, you're like, damn it, I need to go fix this. And get up and go fix it. And yeah, it probably wouldn't be as much fun as you think.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a lot of fun. And it's like the most fun, I think, is actually when you're really comfortable behind the bar pouring drinks, because then you're like in control, but you're also having fun, and you've got like a support staff there, so you can kind of do the things you want to do, and it
allows you to really meet a lot of the patrons, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like I just got an invite. I'm sure you probably did too. To one of our old regulars are getting married. Like you develop a lot of really close friendships with a lot of different people, and from all kinds of different places. So it's pretty.
The glamorous side of it is a little bit more fleeting. You only get moments of that because you are trying to run a business. One of the smartest things I ever heard somebody say when we first started doing this full time was business first, lifestyle second. And I think that's 100% true. You need to treat it like a business, be very disciplined. One of the things I think we've both been lucky in is that I like working with smart people, and we've been able to hire really good people so that when you're doing a lot of that legwork, the stuff that doesn't get celebrated or doesn't get a lot of shine, when you're talking about owning a bar, it makes it a lot more tolerable and it's a lot more fun.
That's good. So let's get into the history of how the two of you met.
Sure.
So how did that origin story start?
We were both in law school.
Law school?
2003. Yeah. We went to law school at UC Davis and became part of like a really special group of friends. Like I know other people who go to law school are like, what are you talking about? Like, what does that happen? Everybody is like, not a lot of people like a lot of people that went to law school. We have a group of about 20 friends that I actually moved to Texas, and I came back in large part because I was like, I really missed that group of friends. Yeah. And then and we'd always been close, and then we lived together for a while in San Francisco. And then I don't know if I'm going to keep going with the whole story, but then I decided I was done being a lawyer. I'd been basically a temp for a long time, and I had friends who owned a few bars, and I talked to them. They're like, well, if you hate it so much, like, why don't you quit and come work for us? So
what was it that you hated so much about that?
I was working for mostly it was just like reviewing emails, and I had my boss came to me at one time, my favorite boss I ever had in that job, and she was like, you shouldn't be doing this. Like, why don't you do something? Let me help you get a job doing something more meaningful. And I looked at her job and I was like, all right, you like have to wake up before your kids wake up to work. Then you like drop them off at school, come back home or pick them up, And then you're working again until 11 at night on, I don't know, mortgage insurance, which is what I ended up doing. I was like, that is not the life I want to live. And I was working for a large bank and as a temp. And then they made me a permanent offer. And it was like, kind of for me, it was like, okay, is this what I want to do? And it definitely was not. I was super unhappy. And so the day they gave me a permanent offer, I gave my 2 weeks notice. And my friends that I opened up Soda Popinski's with gave me a job and were like, why don't you learn the back end with us? And they had, I don't know, at that time they had 4 or 5 bars. And then Javi was eager to help out with that. And so, and then a couple years went by. So 2 years went by and then felt ready to open something else. So then we decided to open Jackalope together. And then it's been about 5 years. Yeah, since that happened.
Okay, so you guys met at Soda Popinski?
No, we met in law school.
Yeah, law school.
Yeah. And then we lived together in San Francisco for a couple years.
Okay, and then Javier, were you also involved with Soda Popinski?
Yes, but not directly as a business partner.
Okay.
I had just come out of, like, after law school, he moved away to Texas. I was a professor with the university for 2 years. After that point, a buddy of ours lived with our 2 buddies, Cory and Marc, and Dan, shout out. Afterwards, though, the timing worked out so that when I did move back to the Bay Area, our buddy Marc was moving in with his now wife. So the room opened up. I moved in. We got to see each other on a regular basis. I just finished up a gig with a business in San Francisco. It wasn't the greatest experience. And so I had a little bit of a pause. It was right when he was starting Soda Popinski. So I said, how many times does life give you a chance to help out a buddy? So go do that. And then I'll figure it out as we go. And little by little, I was just like, all right, you want to start doing inventory? I was like, all right, let's do that.
And it was super fun. At the time we opened it, it was our other roommate. So it was the three of us who had all gone to law school together, all working at the bar. And then we had another buddy who, Zane, who was also there, who had, I think he had his master's in marketing. So we had the 3 of us with JDs and him with like a master's, maybe something more than that. But we always were like, we'll beat any other bar in trivia.
So what was it about law for you that made you get away from that industry?
I'm still in it to a degree. I've been consulting with UC Berkeley's undergraduate admissions program for about the last 10 years. And it's mostly just related to like compliance in the admissions protocols. So I still dabble. And then occasionally there's an issue in immigration law called inadmissibility. So if you leave the country, you can't get back in.
Yeah.
You're deemed inadmissible. I can process that paperwork still pretty fast. So, yeah. So, I didn't hate it. But again, how many times does life give you the opportunity to do something unique? Might as well try. You can always go back to being a lawyer.
Yeah, true.
You know?
So at what point did Jackalope come into play? What year was this?
2014.
Yeah.
Right before Maya, right?
Yeah. My daughter was born like the month after we opened Jackalope, my oldest daughter. So 2014. I had been looking, I'd been ready to open something, and it just was like almost made a poor decision and opened the spot like deep in the Tenderloin and backed out, and then right after I backed out, Jackalope came on the market, and I approached Javi about it, and it's been super great and super busy. It's a tiny space, but people love it, and we love it, and we have an awesome staff there, and it's been like just this last weekend was SantaCon, so it was our busiest weekend of the year.
You know, I saw a very interesting segment about SantaCon by John Oliver, and I don't know if you saw that, where I guess there's a lot of negative backlash from a lot of bar owners, restaurants on SantaCon. And in fact, I think it was last year or the year before, the original people that started SantaCon held a funeral for SantaCon because they said it's not the same as it was.
There's a bar on Polk Street that will not open their doors for SantaCon. Which is great as someone who's working SantaCon. They keep their gates closed. They're like, just come in. We're going to look like we're closed. You're not allowed if you have a Santa hat on. But if you want to pop in and have like quiet drink and mellow out, like stop by. But it's like kind of a secret thing, and it's amazing.
It's really cool. It's a good break in the day.
Okay, so we have to talk about First Edition because I take it the 2 of you are big into comics, and so am I, and so is Sam, and that's why we really wanted to get you on the show, because it's a very unique style bar. I haven't seen anything like this done before. So let's talk about how did First Edition, how did that idea come about?
Well, its roots were in Jackalope, actually, because originally Jackalope, after, what was it, a year and a half?
Something like that.
The property owners had suggested or mentioned that if we wanted to move into the space next door to us, we could expand the bar out. At that point, we started throwing around ideas. What would we want to do? What would we want it to, sort of the feel of it be? And the idea that kept coming up was like this cool lair, like almost like a villain's lair, the cool hangout, that type of thing. And we started coming up with ideas, started talking about some who are our favorite villains, who are our favorite characters, really. And that idea just sort of kept building on itself, so that even when San Francisco, we got turned down for the expansion, you have to go through the city council. We got turned down. We had still all those ideas. So those were just kind of like dormant for a while. And when the opportunity came for first edition, we just contacted our interior decorator. Guy went nuts. He's super talented. Michael Brennan, shout out again. And he did an amazing job there. We really, and as I understand, he's not even done. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where's the exact location for first edition?
1915 Broadway in Oakland.
So why the villains? Why not the superheroes that people tend to really admire? And just out of full disclosure, I'm a big villain fan. In fact, I told you earlier that my entire leg sleeve is Star Wars, but it's all Sith Lords.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I have none of the good guys on my leg.
We're not anti-superhero.
But villains are more, are more interesting. I think they generally are like more complicated characters. They're usually darker, which is more fitting to a bar. I think that like some of Oakland is like, the Raiders aren't exactly looked upon as the good guys of the NFL.
That's true, yeah.
And like Oakland's kind of got this chip on its shoulder, gets a lot of comparisons to San Francisco, the city, the town. So there was some of that played into it. The villain theme is not super, super strong there. I don't want to mislead anybody. Our bartenders don't wear costumes or anything like that. We do have a big villainous sculpture on the wall that Michael did that's awesome, which also is the cover of our menu, which is like a comic book.
The menu is very kick-ass.
The menu is awesome.
Yeah, that's something I've never seen before.
Yeah, a lot of that's actually, there's a comic book filter on your iPhone, but it's only available when you're doing like a text message. So that's all of the stuff we shot is we just did it on our own with the comic book filter on the iPhone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you can do a cool little setup of yourself.
Wow, that's very cool. So with first edition now open, where are you guys trying to take this in the next few years? What's the ultimate goal?
I think one we'd like to get it under control a little bit from where it is now. It's a little crazy at the moment. We do it, get some systems in place where we don't have to be there all the time and are not constantly running around. But one thing we hope to do is we have actually a giant basement there that is roughly the size of our ground floor. So it's about 3,200 square feet in the basement. We'd like to eventually convert that into more bar space. Not sure how realistic that is at this point. We have to delve a lot deeper into it, but that would be one thing where we want to eventually end up. Because right now we're getting we have two mezzanines. We've got one with a permanent bar on it. We're putting portable bar in the other one. So it's like we're just trying to figure out what we can do and where everything goes at the moment, and trying to make sure that everybody who comes in there has an awesome time.
That is one of the beautiful things of being your own boss, being starting your own company, is really trying to play around with what works, what doesn't. It's piecing it all together and creating something very unique.
Yeah, it's nice to not have to run through 12 layers of management before you can get a minor suggestion implemented, to just be able to be like, all right, we're doing this. Let's go.
Yeah. Now you were denied on the expansion in San Francisco for Jackalope. So going into Oakland, what was the difference between San Francisco and Oakland? Was it way easier? Was it
so much easier?
Yeah.
Yeah, like night and day. I mean, dealing with the city, San Francisco was just you have to get all these sort of endorsements and why. And so I was uber prepared.
You have to get endorsements.
Just from neighborhood associations and stuff like that, which we did, but we still were denied we have good relationships with our neighbors. But and there was I did look at a previous location where I had some issues with OPD, but for the most part, like the city of Oakland was so easy to work with, from planning to like tenant improvement support to like there's an uptown association specifically designed to market Oakland, and the community around there is super strong. Like we've gotten help from Hello Stranger, which is a bar there. The owner of Here's How comes by. One of our friends is taking over Flora. There's just it's a smaller feeling community there. So like in terms of the other businesses, they're just really great, but also the city so much easier than San Francisco.
Now, in terms of setting up the actual bar, what were some of the most difficult things you experienced?
Ooh, Cory tends to deal with more of the bureaucratic side of it, so it doesn't weigh too much on me. But ooh.
Yeah, it was a learning experience. So I had tried to do a different bar in Oakland with a buddy of mine, and gotten through a little bit of the headache of it. But we'd never done a build out before. Bought Soda Pop and Skews as an operating bar. Bought Jackalope as an operating bar. And I came in and saw. I really didn't. After the experience I had at the other space in Oakland, I was like, I only want to do turnkey spaces. But when I walked in and saw First Edition, I was like, the space is just beautiful. Yeah. So I was like, okay, we have to do this. And I didn't know what I was doing. And just it was like, oh, cool. Like there's electrical, there's some bathrooms. This should be really easy. As it turned out, none of that was permitted. And I still, even when I learned that, I was like, it'll still be fine. So, we went like double our budget. Fortunately, we had a lot of support and people who were willing to will loan us money and stuff like that. So it was a big learning experience. So trying to get stuff set up like that was so much harder than just coming into a turnkey place where you're like, exactly what you're getting and kind of what's going to work and what's not, because you can sit and watch it. But you don't get to do that with a build out. And then if you want to change something, you've already spent a ton of money on it, and it can be really frustrating.
Yeah, it seems like, because I've talked to a few people that have started, like East Brother Beer, basically starting up a brewing company from scratch, right? Or restaurants from scratch. There's always a lot of money that goes into these places. Everyone tends to say it's gone over budget every single time.
Always over budget and behind schedule.
Yeah, and just the equipment alone can be very expensive.
Yeah. There are options to rent some of the equipment. And I don't know if I would go back and do that or not. It's, you kind of pay it, you can pay it, you basically like pay it off in a year or whatever, as opposed to rent. If you rent it, you're just going to keep paying it forever. But it is nice to not have that capital startup cost. But yeah, it's a lot. There are just places you would never think of that, stuff that we never budgeted for that we spent a lot of money on.
So what are some of the specialty cocktails that First Edition has?
Oh, gosh. It's probably, it's our most ambitious menu we've ever put together. And by we, I mean our beverage director, not us.
Yeah, that's our beverage director. So when we read the Cocktail Codex, which is by Alex Day, by Alex Day, Dave Kaplan, and Devin something. But they're the group from Death & Co. And the basic premise of the Cocktail Codex is that there are six... There are really only 6 cocktails. Everything else is like a riff on one of those. So we took that premise, and so we have the 6 root cocktails, which are like an old fashioned, a martini, a sidecar, a highball, a flip, and a daiquiri. And then there are classic twists on all those classic cocktails, whether a classic twist or a modern twist, but something that's well known. And then we did 6 of Naps's twists on those. So we have 18 cocktails, and the Naps added she added 3 non-alcoholic because there's going to be more of a push for that kind of stuff, and then 3 specifically low ABV. So if you're going to be there, for 6 hours or something, then you might order a nice low ABV cocktail to slow things down, or put a no ABV cocktail in the middle there.
Yeah.
So,
do you guys sell Zacapa?
No.
We don't, actually, but she had that originally on her wish list. We had her create a wish list. What does your inventory want to look like? What kind of spirits do you want to put on the back bar? All those decisions are not just about what's going into a specific cocktail. It's all right. What are we going to carry here? What's going to be our selection looking like? And she had some on there that I'd never heard before.
No.
But I definitely heard that one. I was like, all right, let's look at it. One cool thing about business so far is that, you budget very, very conservatively right out the gate. Be careful about the money. When you're talking about something like your initial question, right? Like, what's your main focus right now? One of my biggest ones is always data. I want to know, what the numbers are doing. Are we budgeting correctly? Are we, paying attention to what the data is telling us? After like a month, it was nice to look at the bank account and go, okay, you want to add a couple more items to the wish list? Let's do that now. So it's nice to see it start growing a little bit.
Yeah, I asked about Zacapa because one of my favorite drinks is a Zacapa Old Fashioned.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, that's a nice little twist on that
it
drink.
is.
So talking about data, what goes into the strategic goal or decision making when you're looking at a list of, let's say, a wish list of alcohol and spirits? Why are you choosing this one over the other?
It's all variables, if you ask me. So if I'm thinking about a menu, I was just talking with one of our bar managers in San Francisco today about her next iteration of a cocktail menu. I was like, well, what do you want that to look like? How many components do you want in a particular drink? How many drinks do you want the menu to have? All those are different variables, and I think it's about sort of having an idea, seeing how you weigh those variables to meet your ultimate goal, and then either making compromises or tough decisions as you go.
I think some of the data you have to look at too is we look at pour costs. So
Yeah.
like, how much does this cocktail take us how much does it take us to make? Like, or how much money does it take to make? So we'd shoot for typically like a bar restaurant standard. I think you're shooting for 15 to 20%. So if you can get under that. The other thing you're looking at is how long does it take you to make? Because we've all been in cocktail bars where you're sitting there for like 8 minutes to get a drink, which is not only frustrating as a consumer, but also as a bar owner. You're sitting there and you're like, if we could make a cocktail in a minute, we'd have 8 of these out and we'd have 8 times the money.
Yeah, because the longer someone waits for a drink and then if they walk out, that's lost money.
Yeah, and even if they stick around, like, well, maybe every person would have had 3 cocktails if we were faster instead of 1. So like we definitely try to get them under a minute and a half, get them under 20% pour costs. And then another thing is just, is anyone going to buy this? Which
Right.
I think we've seen with a lot of stuff. You can bring in an awesome product, but if they don't have the marketing support to really like the name recognition, then it just doesn't sell, which is a bummer because there's really good stuff and you put it on the shelves and you're like, I love this. And nobody just buys it. So,
Yeah.
and it's like, if you buy a lot of it, you've got a lot of money just sitting in inventory.
Yeah, you see that a lot with bars that try to stock every possible drink,
Yeah.
right? Every possible alcohol, and a lot of it just sits there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to some people. Some bar owners are like, I'm going to have, everything I want. And that's really important to me.
And I guess that's okay if you have the type of clientele that come in and they're constantly asking for a variety,
Right.
and that's what you're known for.
Yeah, we're trying to sell mostly like what's on our cocktail menu. So I don't think we're not trying to give the expectation to people that they can come in and order any cocktail ever and we'll be able to make it. Like, we're not training our staff. I mean, our staff are really skilled, and I would say the vast majority of them, actually probably all of them, know how to make more classic cocktails than I do. Which is probably a little bit of a low bar, but yeah, they're definitely pretty knowledgeable, but they're not going to be like some crazy sort of next level, know every cocktail ever created sort of place. But we want to focus on doing the things that we do, our menu really well, really fast, and so that's where we're at.
So you said the industry average is about 15 to 20% of the cost of the drink is
That's
what
right.
it costs you to create the drink.
Yeah.
Does that also include labor costs, or is it just...
No, that doesn't include. That's just pure product cost. So
Okay.
like you're shooting for like roughly that percentage, and then you're, depending on what your bar or restaurant, we shoot for like 15 to 20% labor costs. But I know it can get a lot higher in restaurants. I was talking to somebody the other day whose labor cost was like 53%.
Wow.
And so that's like, I think they went out. It was referencing a business that went out of business because you just can't. You can't make any money doing that if you're, especially presumably if your labor costs are that high, your product costs are probably pretty high too, because you're probably doing something insane. So there's just not a lot of money left to pay off debt and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing because as a consumer, you see the prices of food and cocktails just going up and going up. I mean, I remember when you can go out to the city and get cocktails for $10-11.
Yeah.
Then they creeped up to 12, 13, 14, 15. I recently went out to House of Prime Rib, a wine bar, and some other bar, and $18 cocktails.
Yeah.
You know, and so you, as a consumer, you see those prices going up. But there's a whole different other side, and it's very interesting to hear that other side from the actual businesses that are supplying those drinks. That, hey, I mean, your guys' costs are also going up.
Yeah, totally. And then, it depends where you're at too. Like, a lot of it can be affected by rent, which is partially why, like, if you go out in the financial district, they're going to be way more expensive drinks because they just can't afford to do $8 cocktails.
It sort of goes back to what you're asking, like, what's our goal for First Edition ultimately? Obviously, it's to be a part of a community, right? You want to be, I went to undergrad at Cal, so that activist spirit always going to be in the air in the East Bay. It's one of the things I love about the East Bay. And one of the ways I think you're part of the community is to offer, a good selection of your spirits that hopefully your customer base, ideally likes, but also providing it to them at a cost that isn't exorbitant, so that it's not just for one clientele or another. It's as much as the community that wants to come in, pay a reasonable price. And if we do our homework, we do our, the research correctly, we're not losing money by providing affordable drinks. If you do it right, the pour costs are low, you should be fine. So that's what we're trying to do, is create, become part of the neighborhood, become part of the community, so that people can rely on us as a business like that isn't just trying to open the doors and make a buck.
And we do run an aggressive happy hour too. We have $5 old fashions for our happy hour. So the pour cost not so great on that one.
Yeah.
But it's cool.
Yeah, but I guess the whole marketing aspect from happy hours to get people to come in, and then they stay there longer beyond happy hour, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that works like most promotions do.
Yeah.
So villains. If you could pit two villains to fight and battle each other, who would they be?
Ooh.
I thought about this question. I changed my answer. I'm going back to childhood on this one and combining two out of the two different universes, which I think was the original question.
Yeah.
Was Shredder and Bowser, because I kind of want to see Shredder fight a different turtle.
Oh, that's a good one. I did not expect that one. That's a good one.
We have a loose interpretation of who villains are.
Wait,
I'm just saying. I do too. I think Ernesto de la Cruz from Coco, he's a villain.
Yeah.
He's a villain. He may not be in comic books, but that's a villain. So I always like that. Again, we play a lot with pop culture in our own friendship. So when we started talking about these things, I was like, wow, there's a lot of villains out there we haven't even considered. Because my initial reaction was like, I like someone like James Moriarty, Professor James Moriarty. Even though I don't think he's a villain technically, I think he's more of a nemesis, because Sherlock's nemesis, but he's super smart. You don't really know his mythology. One of the cool things I think about that makes villains cool, as with respect to your earlier question, is their mythology. They all have an and then moment, right? So, or even superheroes have them too. Peter Parker's a normal kid and then got bit by a radioactive Spider-Man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has an and then. And as people with our backgrounds, I think that's the thing we get asked the most is, how'd you go from bars, or how'd you go from law to owning bars? That's a weird mythology, right? It's a weird origin story. We have that and then moment. So for me, the villains that have the best backstories are the ones that have the most complex mythology. Moriarty is always... Have you ever read Sherlock Holmes books?
No, I haven't.
His backstory isn't always the same. It's very, very different. So it's hard to get a grasp on his mythology, but he's super smart, super intelligent. And it looks like he's evil just to be sort of evil, because he's so almost burdened by his own intelligence, which I can relate to. But yeah, I would like to see him up against somebody else super smart or super talented. Voldemort, that would be kind of cool, but I would want to see them like pit it off against each other. If Rick Sanchez was the one in charge of it from Rick and Morty, then I'd be like, ooh, okay, I like this.
Yeah, I thought about this question too, and I was thinking it'd be kind of nice to see like Thanos' army versus Army of the Dead from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Nice.
That'd be just two massive armies just going at each other.
You gotta like also align your villains so that it's not like one who has super powers and one who doesn't. Right?
Yeah.
Like, because then it's not gonna be that fun if you're putting like Johnny Lawrence up against Magneto or something.
Yeah, well, that's also one of the criticisms about like Superman versus Batman, isn't it?
Yeah,
because
right.
especially if you see like the DC the animated movies.
Yeah.
I forgot which one it is where Batman he's like 70, 80 years old and he's still fighting, keeping up with the best of them. It's like, okay, come on, this is a regular dude. Like he's got billions of dollars, but this is a little far fetched.
Yeah. But the Superman is like, I think, a good example of an uninteresting superhero, because like his weakness is kryptonite, but like that's it. Like he just has like a million other superpowers and can fly and is super speed and is bulletproof. Like I think that like weaknesses are what make people interesting, and a lack thereof makes you sort of uninteresting.
Well, guys, I want to thank you for coming on to the show. I wish you guys the best with First Edition. So for people that are interested in learning more about First Edition, what's the website? And we'll make sure to link it up.
I think it's firsteditionoakland.com. You could probably look that up, but I'm pretty sure that's right. We do more of our stuff. We post on Instagram, and our handle is firstedition1915.
At Gmail.
Or you can email us at firstedition1915@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool,
Perfect.
man.
Thanks, Marc.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show. I wish you guys the best. I will definitely swing by, and we'll have to look up. And for the listeners and viewers, we were right before we started recording, just talking about Star Wars. I guess there's a pub crawl.
Yeah.
Star Wars themed pub crawl happening this coming weekend or next weekend. So we'll definitely have to take a look at that, and I'll for sure be swinging by your guys' spot because I definitely want to take a look at that in person. The menu is so badass. So
it's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
come through.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks
buy
for
the beer next time.
Yeah. So thanks for being on the show.
All right.
Well, thanks, Marc.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.